Values aren't buses. They're not supposed to get you anywhere. They're supposed to define who you are. Tonight we're going to talk about values, what they are, what they're not, how they relate to morals, how they're important for our leaders, and how they're important for us as individuals. Before I go on to the next slide, which kind of gives the answer away, I'd like to ask you, what do you think values are? Has anyone got an idea what a definition of a value is? Alice?
Sum total of what you are. I guess the values you put on life.
Okay. Anybody else got an idea?
Commitment?
Well, commitment is a value, but what are values as a whole? Anne?
It's a set of beliefs that a person or cultures join and form and agree upon.
Okay. But here's the Toastmaster definition. Values are the beliefs and ideas that affect affect the way people make decisions and conduct themselves. I'm going to take a little foray into morals. Because lots of times you hear morals and values as if they're a match set. And the fact is they're not. Morals are what we call a social construct. And what that means is that society decides what's right and what's wrong. Not us. We're socialized from birth. When our parents start teaching us to play nice in the sandbox. And once we reach adulthood, we have laws that are in place in our society that impose what's right and what's wrong. I'm not going to go into any length with morals. They're a lesson unto themselves, fraught with paradoxes. However, it's important. These are the two important points, that it's about right and wrong, and it's socially constructed. Values, on the other hand, are individual. There are no two people in this room that have exactly the same values. What's number 1 on my list might be number 100 on Jatinder's. In fact, we can even have different values in different roles. Our values as a parent may be very different from our values as a business person or a Toastmaster. I have a story to tell you. This is probably the most drastic case I've ever seen of differences in values. My daughter's boss's boss was known around the office as making these erratic decisions and absolutely would not change. I mean, please don't confuse me with the facts. She was the boss everybody loved to hate. Recently, my daughter had the opportunity to get to know her outside of the office. And what she found was that she wasn't like that at all. So what we have here is a person who, in her role as the head of a multi-million-dollar organization with thousands of employees, she has to be strong, she has to be decisive. Those are her business values. But at home, with her family and friends, she's caring and compassionate and generous. So who is she? The fact is, she's all of those things. So groups have values too. Groups like Toastmasters. So I thought we'd do a little bit of an exercise. We've got 2 clubs. Club A is growing slowly. When it comes time for renewal, almost everybody renews. Club B is growing very quickly. They add members very quickly. But when it comes time for renewal, they don't often renew. But both of these clubs see themselves as successful. So I gave you all a value sheet. And what I'd like you to do is give me some ideas of what values would result in these 2 scenarios. I have my trusty whiteboard here ready. So does anybody have an idea? A or B? Whichever you like.
Growth for Club B.
Okay.
I make a lousy kindergarten teacher.
Club A, security.
Okay. Anybody else?
Class A, cordiality.
of the day. Ken?
Group B, ambition.
Any other thoughts? Ron?
A, consistency.
B, professionalism.
Sorry?
Professionalism, B.
Professionalism? So you get the idea. Different values create different results. Now I went through the list myself, and that's what I came up with. That Group A has commitment, they're supportive, and they create a sense of belonging. Group B, growth, carefree, and fun. None of us is right or wrong, but it was just to demonstrate the fact that different values create different results. So how does an effective leader demonstrate his or her values? Well, talking, explaining, and showing. I'm going to do that by example. One of my values as a leader is to provide autonomy to the people in the club. And what I mean by that is that when you take on a role, I think you should be able to do the role your way. So that takes care of talking. Now, explaining. Why do I think that? I think that because, number one, we all learn better when we do. We can listen, we can read, we can do all of those things, but at the end of the day, we need to actually do something to learn it. So by giving you autonomy, you're going to learn better. And number two, if you have autonomy, you can be creative. And I think that's better for you and it's better for the whole club. We get all different ideas because everybody's allowed to express themselves creatively. Then we come to showing. And I think showing is the most important. Because for me to tell you that you should have autonomy, for me to say why, and then when you go to do it, I come along and say, oh, no, that's wrong. No, you have to do it my way. Then obviously I'm not walking the talk, right? So I have to show my values. There are times when leaders need to impact the values of a group. So one of the values here at Hershaw is that we be the best club that we can be. And the way we measure that is through the President's Distinguished Club Program. We need to impact on all of your values to bring that together. And how do we do that? Understanding, explaining, and rewarding. So understanding, we have to understand what the program is. And for those who are not familiar with it, it's a means of evaluating the club based on the progress of its members and its leadership. So we get points for CCs, we get points for CLs, we get points if we go to officer training, etc. So we explain the program. And then rewarding. And you saw that tonight. Michael did his CC10, he had a badge. Someone does a CC6, and they get a certificate. So we reward as we go along, as people work towards their objectives. Now, as I said a little earlier, values are individual. And there are going to be times, even though we all share certain common values, otherwise we wouldn't be here in the same room together, there are going to be times when we disagree. How does a leader handle that? First of all, the leader has to recognize that values are individual. There's no right and wrong. Everyone has a right to their own values. And that leads us to point two, which is respect. We have to make sure that we respect everyone's values. Again, no right and wrong, no judgment. And then we have to come up with a compromise. The compromise won't be exactly what anyone wants, but the intent is that it's something that we can all live with. Have you ever had that experience where you've seen something untold numbers of times and it doesn't really register? When I went to work on this project, I thought, well, gee, what are our values? I knew I'd seen them somewhere. It turns out they were on the bottom of the agenda for the officers' meeting. And I have to say, when I read them, What came into my mind was that Sesame Street song. One of these things is not like the others. Now this is just my opinion, and you're all certainly welcome to disagree. But I looked at it and said, okay, communication, yes. Obviously, that's why we're here. Consistency, yes. We consistently have an agenda. We consistently evaluate in the commend, recommend, commend format. There's lots of things we do consistently. Commitment, yes. We're all here every week, other than this week. But on a typical week, we have 30 people in this room. And then we come to Carefree. And for me, that's the one that's not like the others. I don't see us as carefree at all. So if anybody else feels that way, you're welcome to bring a motion forward next week and ask for a values workshop to redefine what Hershaw's values are. I'm going to close with a quote from Roy Disney. It's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are. I would encourage you to take the values list and go through it for yourself. Define what your values are in your personal life, in your business life. Here are Toastmasters. Because when you know those values, anytime you're faced with a decision, it's easy. I'm a Toastmaster.